go to line number 1. Good morning, Denny Dumaresque. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Terrific this morning. How about you?
Good. I wanted to call a couple of things. I took in the meeting in Corner Brook, just happened to be in there on other business on Tuesday night, and took in the meeting with Mr. Ball and Mr. Joyce and Mr. Parsons there on the issue of the radiation services. And must say I was very impressed. I believe that the Liberal Party and certainly Mr. Ball was in his element talking about healthcare. And what I liked about it, and I believe what anybody observing would like about it, is that the Liberal Party and Mr. Ball are approaching public policy options for people to consider that are evidence-based. Clearly, the position that he arrived at was after complete and thorough research, actually acknowledged the great Labradorian there, Miss Joy Buckle, who's the Director of Research up there, that put a tremendous amount of work into going nationally and internationally to seek out what is happening with radiation services, and certainly made the case quite convincingly that unfortunately in this case, the demand is there to support the scan and the radiation services with one bunker, similar to what's in Cape Breton there right now. And so I certainly was pleased to be a part of that, and I also acknowledge to them, again, unfortunately, every family is affected by this dreaded disease, and we're no exception, and certainly on the coast of Labrador and throughout Labrador. And I also pointed out to them, that on the lower North Shore of Quebec, where we have a few thousand people that are all basically English-speaking, and I have relatives there as well, that if this kind of service was available in Corner Brook on the west coast, certainly that would be an option, a real option for people in that area. And of course, none of these statistics were brought into the picture, but there's no question at the end of the day, the numbers do speak very well, apart from any of the other aspects that certainly I'm sure will come out tonight with testimony from various residents in that region of the province.
Well, we know what the residents, you know what they're going to say. They want it, right? And you bring up an interesting point that I don't think we consider very much is, well, I guess we do talk a lot about services provided to Labrador, but what makes Labrador any different than Western Newfoundland, right? If we're talking about people deserve it, then what makes one region's people more important than anybody else? So that's where I think the conversation gets a little bit tangly, and we allow emotions to run wild. Why wouldn't we have an MRI unit in Twillingate? Yeah. Well, why wouldn't we? Cost. Well, why wouldn't we have one in Labrador City? I know, cost.
Yeah,
right? And that's the tricky part.
It's all cost, and it's all on need. And but when you have the evidence-based position established on the basis of serving 300 patients, and as the evidence showed, by getting just, I think, 20% of the present patients, not including anybody from the lower North Shore of Quebec, for example, that just 20% coming from Labrador. And I know, as I said, unfortunately, we've all had hardships where tremendous financial stress is placed on people, particularly from Labrador, having to fly to St. John's and accommodations and everything else, whereas if they could drive. Now, mind you, like I told them, we need to put that tunnel there so they can drive through at the same time. But certainly, even outside of that, being able to drive into Corner Brook from Labrador, because now we have the Trans-Labrador Highway right from Labrador City right through. So, the equation has changed significantly from what it was 10 or 15 years ago. And therefore, these numbers and these factors got to be considered, and there's no question in my mind that the case has been well made, and I congratulate Mr. Ball and his staff for doing the due diligence they did to this particular file.
And fair ball, Danny, before we run out of time and get to the news, on my screen it says PUB.
Yes, well, talk about due diligence and the file. Today is a major day in the Public Utilities Board investigation. The report of the Liberty Consulting Group, which is a very well-known and certainly had a great background from the U.S. In 4 other provinces, including I think it's 20 or 30 states of the U.S. have investigated blackouts and investigated utilities and best practices and asset readiness and all of those things. Yeah. They are reporting today, and as an intervener, I will get a copy of that report now in the next few hours and have a look at it. But this is the first real independent, in my opinion, certainly from public perception and reality, that this is the first cold eyes that's come in and gone in to both Newfoundland Power and Newfoundland Hydro with a team of experts who've done it in Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Alberta, and many other states, and they've come in and they've looked at where we are. So what I guess I'm telling you today is, as a person who's followed this closely, I am quite comfortable that what they have to say will be extremely meaningful to me, because certainly there are no other agendas other than to look at what is happen and what should happen going forward from a company that has a track record that's impeccable. And whether that comes out today and says that Hydro is the best utility that they've looked at in all of their history, if they do, I say good on them, and I will certainly follow any recommendations that they may set out as we proceed to the investigation.
It's an important comment, because far too often the independent voice gets rebuffed if it doesn't say what people think, right?
Yes, so, absolutely.
And I think that is really unfortunate how we proceed. Just a couple of quick questions before we go, Danny. Well, we looked at the independent engineer's report, and we had those unfortunate redactions that were part of the public release. Whether or not they all get publicly released at one point in time, they say they will, and that remains to be seen. But when we put as much faith as many people do in the PUB gets to see the unredacted versions of all this stuff immediately, right?
I don't know that for a fact.
Oh,
no.
See, now I thought they did, but I don't know for a fact either.
And you may very well be right, but I have not had that confirmed. I know as an intervener, I do not get to see it.
Yeah.
Right, so certainly there's if one or two or all of the commissioners see it is one thing, but I know as a verified intervener and one of the parties involved, I do not get to see that information, and I really do believe that I should, or indeed I don't see what there is to hide, particularly with the amount of energy that's going to be coming out of Muskrat Falls during the highest demand, the peak period time, basically November until April. I want to know, and I believe the people deserve to know, whether there's going to be sufficient demand coming out of that facility, firm power, to meet our obligations to Nova Scotia and to meet the obligations to the Avalon Peninsula when Holyrood is closed down.
Well, I guess when it comes to meeting obligations, the firm power's percentage of firm power is all they can anticipate. They can't get 60% or 40% of a made-up number. It can only be a firm power generated. So I think that's an interesting one, and I'd like to understand that a bit further. And also, when the PUB getting to look at unredacted versions, which I think they do, I'll confirm. I'll send a note to the PUB right away here. If they do get a full look, does that take some of the sting out of people condemning Nalcor for holding back numbers from the public? Because it can't be both ways. We either have faith in the PUB or we don't. If they get to see all the numbers, do we not trust them enough to evaluate independently their assessment of them, as opposed to just clobbering the Nalcor or the government all the time for a redacted version that the public gets first?
Well, there's two issues. One, I have no problem with accepting the determination of the PUB and accepting that they are doing it on the basis of evidence that other people cannot see.
Yep.
That's no problem. I trust that institution. I have no reason at this stage to do otherwise. If I do, I will certainly say so. But the other issue is what is the merit of withholding certain information? That is an issue that I take seriously, and I think everybody in the province takes seriously. What is this commercial sensitivity? Because, of course, you know that Newfoundland Hydro is 100% owned by Nalcor. But Newfoundland Hydro is subject to the Public Tender Act, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act, and it's subject to the Auditor General's value for audit. So all of these things are not subject to the operations of Nalcor. And that's where I have an issue, because what is happening now, as a subsidiary of Nalcor can take a report that's dealing with hydro. In this case, what the output would be from the generating facility in Labrador, and because it's a subsidiary of Nalcor, Nalcor can introduce its power to veto any information it wants under this nebulous classification of commercial sensitivity. And that is what's wrong, and that's why I certainly look forward and hope that we can see some changes with a new government that will strip Nalcor of its ability to be so secret, because why should it apply when it doesn't apply to its own subsidiary, Newfoundland Hydro, if it was still continuing to stand as a standalone corporation?
Yeah, there's something inside that, there's no doubt about it, because we can't replace one act of secrecy or protection of commercially sensitive documents with cabinet secrecies. So, nor can we fall for someone saying, well, I'll remove this, but then they just replace it with that. Because that's a problem that we see played with a political game and chess piece moving all the time. Danny, I gotta get to the news, but appreciate your time this morning. Stay in touch. Let us know what the updates are with release of information, particularly from Liberty.
Yes, I appreciate it, and probably tomorrow or early next week we can have a wrap about that, but I'm looking with anticipation to this particular report, because I have a feeling it may not be acknowledging that hydro is the best in the world. Yeah,
we'll see, and we will take it for what it's worth, because it does. The company has an impeccable reputation as far as I could find, and I've read a lot about them in the recent past, so appreciate your time. Talk soon.
Okay.
Thanks, Danny. Bye-bye.